Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Marcia Hovey, the chair of CADRE, and on behalf of the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits and CADRE, we welcome you to this presentation on understanding FEMA and disaster recovery and how we all fit into that process. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna Swardensky. She will be facilitating this presentation. Go ahead, Anna.
All right, thank you, Marcia, and good morning, everyone. We have about close to 70 folks already logged in. We had registrations as of 15 minutes ago, upwards of 115, 120 folks. So there will be quite a few folks joining us this morning, and we welcome you all. What you see in front of you are what we designed as our objectives for this morning. It is to share what guidance has been released so far by FEMA, specifically for COVID-19, and discuss what we know about the process for nonprofits who may be interested in seeking this type of assistance for the work that you're doing. We know that this is sometimes a complicated and a confusing topic. And we know it's also laden, for those of us in the nonprofit sector, with a lot of kind of government speak. There's a lot of details in the information that we're going to be presenting to you, and there's a lot of devil in the details. So it's very true on this topic, and we're going to do our best to give you the highlights on this first discussion here in Santa Clara County through this session, so that you all have as much information as we've been able to pull together for you. So you can decide if you want to continue down this pathway and pursue this type of support through the various levels of our government sector. So with that, I'm going to continue on and walk you through what did we plan for your agenda this morning. And we're going to start off with an overview of what the resources are as we understand them, specifically for private nonprofits. What is eligible under FEMA's public assistance program? Talk about who is the applicant if you want to proceed with this process. What is the role of our state Office of Emergency Services, and where does that intersect with our local jurisdictions of our various cities and Santa Clara County? There will be opportunities for you to do some question and answers with our speakers today, as well as use the chat box throughout the session, whatever works best for you. So what we are not covering today, I wanted to kind of set some expectations because we know there are a lot of resources that are being talked about specifically for COVID-19. We will not be digging into the CARES Act resources today, the information about the stimulus monies, the Paycheck Protection Program, the Small Business Administration loans. That's not the content that we're covering today, nor will we be digging into resources that might be available from other federal agencies or departments, such as the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the CDC, or others. So I just want to set those expectations out there in front. A number of you were very good about giving us some feedback in those registration questions, and we thank you ahead of time. That really helped us to plan today's program. Some of you did ask some questions about some of the you see on this slide. So I just wanted to set those that information out there, because if that's what you joined us for this morning, that won't be what we're covering. So I want to give you your time back if that's what you were hoping to hear about. So I wanted to call out, if you are interested in some of those other resources, particularly that are not focused on FEMA public assistance, I'd urge you to look at the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits website. On their homepage, they have listings of upcoming trainings and webinars, and there's also a community calendar. So some of the topics that a few of you have asked about in your registration were actually covered as webinars in the past couple of weeks, or maybe on the schedule in the upcoming weeks. So please take note of that if you are looking for more information about programs other than what we are covering today. So The next slide, I want to give a little disclaimer as to what we're doing here today. CADRE and the Council of Nonprofits are sharing with you what we know from the various guidance documents, fact sheets, webinars, and whatnot that we have taken a look at, that we've participated in. This presentation is meant to be an overview of the information that has been made available so far by FEMA and Cal OES. Our intent is to give you that information, can evaluate your own opportunities as nonprofit programs, as service providers in Santa Clara County. And lastly, this is not meant to be legal or financial advice. You need to make those determinations for your own organization. We're simply trying to point you to the documents we think we've seen so far that are most appropriate for the nonprofit social service sector. So with that, I'm going to take a moment, or actually I think Wendy might be able to help me. We have compiled some documents already that are going to be a part of today's presentation. And so Wendy is starting to put it in the chat box, some of those web links. If you want to take a moment now and grab a few of these, there will be screenshots so you'll know which documents we're talking about. And we can also make available after the session a single Word document that has all of these links in there. But there are a number of links for the FEMA information that we're going to start sharing in just a moment. And so you'll see some of those pop up in your chat box. If you are joining us only by audio, feel free to go ahead and email us and we'll send you that link of resources as soon as we can. So without further ado, I am going to welcome, we are very pleased this morning to have actually 3 representatives from FEMA joining us this morning. We have Charles Craig, who quite a few of you may know and recognize. Charles is one of our FEMA voluntary agency liaisons based out of our Oakland office. He's been a longtime participant and supporter of our CADRE efforts. Also with us this morning is Colleen, another one of the FEMA VALs, Voluntary Agency Liaisons, and also John, their group. So Charles, I'm going to let you go ahead and get us underway. Let's unmute Charles. There you go.
Good morning. This is Charles Craig. I'm a voluntary agency liaison with FEMA Region 9. As Anna just remarked, we want to talk about what FEMA support is for COVID-19 to private nonprofits. The authority for FEMA to actually go in and help in any disaster is from what's called the Stafford Act. And there are various divisions and sections of the Stafford Act. Section 403 covers public assistance. And I work for individual assistance, so I won't be going into public assistance in great detail, but we'll be able to give you some of the background on it. So we're able to come in because the President of the United States had declared a emergency across the nation, and later on declared a major disaster declaration in California, 4482. Because of that, the public assistance has several different categories that it is able to provide assistance under. But before I go to that, public assistance is a program that is a reimbursement program. It is a program that is providing normally assistance to jurisdictions within the state. When there is a federal declaration, FEMA partners with the state, and the state takes the lead on the recovery, and FEMA supplements what the state is not able to provide. So when it comes to public assistance, we also will partner with the state, and the state will take the lead on those things that are going to be considered eligible applicants and eligible projects. So I will always defer to the state when it comes to those considerations or determinations. Can we go to the next slide? So I stated a moment ago that public assistance was one of the things that was included in the Federal Declaration for 4482. The program that I work for and that many of you are familiar with is individual assistance. Individual assistance is a program that has many parts to it, many assistance programs within it. For this disaster, individual assistance has been granted, and one part of it is crisis counseling. I'm going to ask Colleen, my colleague from Region 9, to speak briefly on the crisis counseling program. Colleen?
Good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing today? Thank you, Charles, for that introduction. Yes, crisis counseling right now is the only program that is authorized under the Stafford Act for IA. And the crisis counseling assistance and training program, I have included on the slide there. Tanya Stevenson is the point of contact that if you have questions or anything that you need further information, she would be the best person to contact. And I've reached out to her, and she said I could share her email with you all today. But let me give you a little bit of background. We have included first off a fact sheet, which should be in the notes detailing the crisis counseling program. But the Crisis Counseling Assistance and Training Program, or CCP, is funded by FEMA, and it's overseen by FEMA coordination with the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So the states, territories, and tribes that receive that presidential declaration for individual assistance includes crisis counseling, and they're able to apply for a federal award. And additionally, if this is something that you're going to be applying for, right now, something to consider is this COVID environment we're in. This is what we're talking about, right? That's the big question. Everything has gone virtual, and we're doing most of our medicine is telemedicine now, right? So that's something that's going to factor in and make this a little bit more challenging than your traditional crisis counseling. The programs available through the crisis counseling program are the immediate services program and the regular services program, which is all listed in the fact sheet that I've provided to you. And again, I'm not an expert on this. Tanya Stevenson would be that expert, so she would be the person to reach out to if you have any questions about how to apply for the crisis counseling and the grants, the grant program, how to do this. So on that note, if there's any questions that you all have for me today, you can put that in the chat box, and I can answer anything that I would be able to answer today. And if not, I can defer back to my colleague, Tanya, and get more information for you. Is there anything specific that anyone has at this time?
There were a few folks that had registered that had indicated they were counseling or mental health aspects of the COVID-19. So feel free to enter your questions in the chat box. And if not, you can send them on afterwards, and we'll push them out to Colleen and her coworker, Tanya. So thank you. And let's go back to Charles then with the next slide. Thank you, Colleen.
So public assistance is one of the largest programs that FEMA has when it comes to recovery. I believe it is stated that out of every dollar, 93 cents goes towards public assistance and 7 cents goes towards individual assistance. So you can see it's a pretty big program. The program has guidance of how it should function. You see there on the slide, Public Assistance Program and Policy Guide. You can find that online and read through it. It talks about the program. It talks about the various categories, and it talks about the things that are eligible for reimbursement. As I stated a moment ago, this is a reimbursement program, and it is designed to reimburse eligible applicants for eligible projects. Eligible applicants are normally jurisdictions, the state, a county, a city, a school district, some type of public entity, as opposed to individuals. As I said a moment ago, I work for individual assistance. Let's go to the next slide.
Charles?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so under eligibility for public assistance, as I stated, you'll see that in the PPG, the Policy and Programs Guide. However, when we work with the states, they are going to be the eligible applicant. And so as a private nonprofit, you will not be able to apply to FEMA directly. You will have to go through a public entity, and you will have to contract with them to provide services on behalf of that entity. Because of that, we would prefer that you go to the state to see exactly what they will be describing as acceptable that they will be submitting to FEMA. The state will have opportunities to do applicant briefings, and I'm sure they will talk about that a little more in the presentation here. But normally when we look at things that are eligible under public assistance, there are a number of categories that are available. The two that are most often looked at under response, which we're doing right now, responding to this disaster, is category A, which is debris removal, and then category B, which is emergency protective measures. One of the things that is included in the Stafford Act is that the FEMA, as part of its authorization, is not able to duplicate those things that are provided by another federal agency or actually a third party. So one of the things that we have to negotiate right now is to see what things are being provided by the Department of Health and Human Services, which includes the Center for Disease Control, what things are being provided in the CARES Act. Those are all considerations that we have to look at as we make determinations as to what we will be able to reimburse or not. I said debris removal is one of the things that are part of the categories that are under public assistance. I'm not sure that there's anything that is being considered right now as far as debris removal. I would have to defer that question to our PA representatives. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah. Was this the one you were on now? Or you want the next one?
The next one.
Okay.
I'm trying. Forgive me, my glasses are interfering here. Which slide are we on?
Charles, we're on the one that right now is the purchase and distribution of food. The one right prior to that was the one that was more general for private nonprofits.
Okay. So, as many of you know, because of the number of individuals who have become unemployed, there's been an increase on the impact of food banks to distribute food. There's also individuals who are in self-isolating or quarantine situations that also require feeding. So food and feeding has become a very large concern that the agency is looking at. And they did put out recent guidance with very specific criteria as to when it would be considered to reimburse for this. I believe Anna has attached this, and you can read through and see. A lot of it deals with the food supply chain, whether or not that is still in the individuals that are entering the demand for food banks. All of those are different considerations that have to be looked at and would have to be included in a submission by the state. So participation in that, you would need to be able to provide that information to the state so that they can put it in their application for that project. But I urge you to go back and look.
Okay, I think we had a little bit of trouble with your last comments there, Charles. Can you hear me, Charles? We have a little bit of a connection problem. Okay, let's keep moving forward. Thank you, Charles, for, sorry, it kind of ended a little abruptly, but are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry, I wanted to let you close out your thoughts.
Well, so FEMA public assistance, as I stated a moment ago, is a reimbursement program. And we reimburse eligible applicants for eligible projects. In this case, all eligible applicants are going to be public entities. Local PNPs are not able to apply directly to FEMA, so you need to work with the local jurisdictions and establish a relationship with them, a memorandum of understanding or agreement or contract to perform services on their behalf, and then they will determine through public assistance of the state whether or not those are going to be eligible projects to push forward to FEMA's PA to review. It is important, as stated in the literature, not to self-deploy, not to expand your services expecting reimbursement, but to work with the state to make certain that you are doing something on their behalf and that you have the documentation to demonstrate it will satisfy whatever the state PA requires for submission.
Okay, thank you so much, Charles and Colleen, for that information. We're going to move, we asked Robbie Larson and Dave Gillings from our State Office of Emergency Services to walk us through a little bit more of where Charles ended just at that point. Who is the applicant for FEMA public assistance? And I want to reiterate the last remark that Charles said that I think is really important for our nonprofits on today's call to hear. As Charles said, it's a reimbursement program, but one of the key factors we need the nonprofit sector Now understand is this is for services that you have been requested by a government entity to provide. You cannot look towards these resources if you were not directly asked. That's what's called self-deployment. Okay, so let me turn it over at this point to Robbie and Dave, if you will walk us through who is the applicant and what would you like our nonprofit sector to know? We know you've gotten this question quite a bit in the last days and weeks. So Robbie.
Thank you, Anna. Can you hear us over here?
Yep, we can.
Good deal.
Okay, so let's just, this is Dave Jones. Pretty simply, right?
So, Robbie?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yep, take it away.
Okay, so if you are a private nonprofit and you have a facility, what do I have to turn down?
Can you turn, hold on one sec. Can you turn your volume down on yours? We got two laptops working here at the same time.
Yeah, turn one of the audios off or you'll get some feedback.
Yeah, turn your volume down if you can. We'll get this figured
We'll
out.
get this figured out. Turn yours down. That's easier.
Maybe.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we're not the most savvy with this new system going on here, but we'll get your questions answered.
What I might offer as a tech support is if you have two laptops going at the same time, you might actually just close one for the moment because you'll get some feedback if you're too close to one another.
Let's just do that, Dave. Let's close mine.
Huh?
We'll just close mine.
Yeah.
Just work off one if you're both together.
Okay. Now it's a little bit better, maybe? Is that correct? A little bit better? Hello?
Okay, we got you guys?
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, we got it.
I think it only works through mine, Dave.
No, I think I had it on mute.
Oh,
Sit down outside. All right.
all right. We're playing musical laptops here. We're entertaining you guys this morning.
Okay, so
Turn yours off.
I don't know how. If you know how, go turn it off. So pretty simply, if you are a private nonprofit, facility.
Can they hear us?
Can you hear us?
Hear you on whatever microphone that is.
All right.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So if you are an eligible private nonprofit and you have a facility, you may still apply for public assistance because you may be performing some type of emergency protective measure.
Is Dave speaking through his? Because we're not hearing much.
All right, I think I'm speaking through somebody's.
Okay, that's clear and loud wherever you are right now.
Okay.
Let's go with
So
that.
if you are a private nonprofit and you have your own facility, correct? You may still apply for public assistance because you may be purchasing personal protective equipment for your own staff. You may be providing some extra sanitation to your buildings, those kinds of things, okay? However, providing services, this guy Charles is in fact correct, okay? Those are not eligible for most private nonprofits, okay? And I'm saying most, because if you are a private nonprofit that is providing medical services, you may in fact be eligible for providing those services, okay? But for the most part, let's say you are a private nonprofit like a food bank, right? You may be requested by a local government. Hello? Hello? Did it mess up?
Nope, keep going.
All right. You may have been requested by a local government. Shut this thing off. Here, I'm just going to close this stupid thing. How do I get out of this thing? Just close it. Holy
To the right. To the right.
This and answer it someplace, would you? Sure. Okay. Now can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
All right. So if you are requested, like a food bank, you're requested by a local government to provide food, which would be the local government's responsibility to a certain number of people or certain types of people that are, affected and blah, 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 blah. Okay. You become a contractor to that local government. So you're going to have some kind of an agreement between yourselves and that local government to provide these services. In turn, you will provide a bill to that local government for your services. Okay. And the local government will claim that from FEMA, be reimbursed, and they'll pay you. Or they'll pay you, get reimbursed, however you want to say it, all right? But that's how it works, because otherwise you are self-deploying, and that is not an eligible expense to most of the private nonprofits. Does that make sense to everyone? Hello?
Yeah. So keep going. Why don't you talk a little bit about, we learned yesterday that there is a new simplified approach or simplified application for public assistance.
All right, so what they've done here, because please everyone understand, there are only so many public assistance people in Cal OES. There's only so many public assistance people in FEMA. While FEMA and Cal OES, we have enough staff to do a pretty decent job under a normal California disaster, right? Because FEMA will bring in people from all over the country, right? But now it's in every state, in every county, all over the United States. And there's just simply not enough people, okay? So FEMA has created this new simplified application, and why they're using the same names for everything, right? I don't know, all right? But this document that you're looking at here is like 35 pages, Robbie, right?
Yeah.
33 pages, but it walks you through the process of, once you have turned in your application, okay, then this walks you through the process how to make a claim. So what they've done pretty much is they've made self-serve public assistance FEMA, all right? So you're going to be doing your own projects. You're going to be entering them into the grants portal system. Okay, we will have people available and assigned, both FEMA and OES staff assigned to each of the applicants so that you can ask questions and they can help you. Okay, but most of this is all self-serve. So we're all learning, as painful as it may be, all at the same time. Okay, and that's what that 33-page document is all about. Okay, now then, I also want to tell you that if you were one of the 4,700 emails that we sent out to various applicants that we have had in the past in the state of California, private nonprofits included, all right, as to how to apply for assistance, okay? If you were one of those recipients of that email, you noticed that there was an April 17th, which is today, deadline to turn in your RPA. That has been extended by FEMA to 30 days past the close of the incident period, which, by the way, is still open, okay? So even if they closed it today, you've still got 30 days to turn in your application. The problem is, I don't know if one of the slides is on here or not. When FEMA made this bypass the states and you can apply directly, it does not apply to private nonprofits, nor does it apply to tribal governments. So for all of the private nonprofits that are out there, you must still send an email to our email box. Okay, and I'm going to tell you the name of it if it's not. Oh, that's it right there. disasterrecovery@caloes.ca.gov. And all that is necessary is you tell them that you're a private nonprofit. You want to set up an account, And for the DR 4482 disaster, COVID, even if you just put in COVID, they're going to know. All right. We need a name, a phone number, and a person's email. They will set up the account. You will get an email back giving you instructions, how to get in, change your password, and how to apply. Now, private nonprofits have 4 different documents or 5 that have to be filled out, all of which a private nonprofit has at their disposal. They're simple forms, but you're going to have some numbers, right? Your tax ID number and I don't know, whatever, okay? There's several forms, so private nonprofits have an extra step or 2 rather than local governments, okay? But that's how you do it, okay? And this thing that's on the screen here, that came from us, okay? So you just follow those instructions. They're going to send you an email, and you do have time, all right? And we go from there.
So
Questions?
just to clarify, there is not an end date for the nonprofits to submit that information to that email account. It's not by today. Is that correct?
It is not today.
Okay. They just
Okay.
need to get that in. And
It is 30 days from the close of the incident period, and the incident period has not closed to my knowledge. However, if it did close today, you still got 30 days.
okay. And so
Okay.
Rob, we do know, Robbie and Dave, that some of our nonprofits in Santa Clara County have written to that email account. I heard on another call, you guys days ago already had 1,100 requests. When can they expect, or how long should they be waiting to hear? If they
1 or 2 days. If you don't hear back, send another email. But I have staff there that are manning the email. They're going as quickly as possible, okay?
Mhm.
And I'm just saying 1 day, 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah, we got 1,468 as of last night. I don't know
Okay.
what the count is today, okay?
All right. So let's pause there. I know there have been a number of questions that have come in, and we do have some more information to share from one of our local jurisdictions after this. But there have been a number of questions I think are directed at our FEMA and Cal OES reps. So, is the online application process used only after you've contracted with a local government to provide assistance, or can they submit an email if they're providing services while they're working out those details?
Okay, this is my suggestion. Robbie would agree with this, okay? Turn in an application. If you decide after you've turned in the application and it has been approved that this is too much like work and you don't want it, a simple email makes the whole thing go away. But if you don't turn in an application, you got nothing to withdraw, and heaven forbid you procrastinate and don't turn it in, and you did need one, and you're late and FEMA doesn't accept it. I'm just telling you, do one.
So let me
Just do
clarify.
one.
Let me clarify something. We've used the word application, and we've also used the word an email to that disaster recovery at Cal OES email account. There's are you
Okay.
asking them to submit the RPA, which is we haven't specifically shared that info yet.
Okay, so this is what's going to happen. Yes, the request for public assistance, because they are a private nonprofit, they cannot bypass the state. They must send an email to disaster recovery telling them they want to submit an RPA. They're going to set up the account, send an email back, and that gets you into FEMA's grants portal. Okay? When FEMA did this, they didn't anticipate, when it comes to private nonprofits, the state has to look at all of the information that they provide. We have to verify that it's all correct, okay? And then FEMA's attorneys look at all the stuff, and they verify it's correct prior to ever approving the application, okay? So you got to go through the state. There's no easy way around it. You send it, a request to that email. They're going to respond. They'll get back to you. You'll go in, turn in your application, okay? Submit it online through the grants portal, and then FEMA will approve it at some point very soon, okay? And like I said, at the end of the day, if the private nonprofit says this is too much like work, I don't even care. I'm not gonna, I want it to go away. A simple email to withdraw it makes it go away. It's not that bad. Okay?
Okay. So that was what somebody call with us talked about. It's like having a ticket to the dance. You want to have a ticket to the dance by submitting your application. If you choose not to show up, you can just withdraw.
That's right. Very simple.
Yes. So, but before, I know there are quite a number of questions in our chat, but let me see if I can, let me ask one thing before we go to some of the specifics. Can you tell us, Cal OES, we know that there are applicant briefings that are being scheduled. Will there be any that will focus more specifically and in-depth on the private nonprofit portion of these applicants? And if so, have those been scheduled yet? Because I think a number of the questions we're seeing in the chat box might be answered through a more robust applicant briefing.
Yes, we have not set them. Yes, we fully intend on having separate briefings for the private nonprofits. While we've never done it that way before, we fully intend to do it because we know that there are a myriad of private nonprofits out there, and they're getting some of the information that's being passed around isn't exactly accurate. So we do understand that. Okay. But no, they haven't been set yet. We're still working on it. The guidance, honestly, you know, had we done it day 4 or day 2, we would be sending volumes of new information to everyone. So I have, you know, so the basic rule is we have to have an applicant briefing within 30 days of the declaration, which puts that at April 22nd. I don't think anybody's going to chop me up into small pieces if I do my first one on the 24th. Okay. You know what I'm saying? I mean, right? But I want to make sure that everybody has as much information when we do it the first time, or literally people are going to be more confused by getting partial information and then being plummeted by new guidance that's coming out from FEMA.
Correct.
Every day, something new shows up. Okay.
And we completely understand that. And this is Dave talking, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes. So this is Anna. So yes, that's super helpful to hear. And it's wonderful to hear that Cal OES is planning to do PNP, private nonprofit focused briefings, because we've never seen that done before. We've asked for that, and we are extremely you know, pleased to hear that you will be doing that. There is a question, and actually quite a few of them in the chat box, asking if you can confirm if the PNP into a contract with local government, do they still need to go through the application process? And if FEMA doesn't say the activity is eligible, then the entity that contracted with them is still paying them, correct?
Should.
Okay.
And do they need to apply? That is their decision. But if you remember how this whole thing started, if you are a private nonprofit and you have your own facilities and you're buying personal protective equipment for your own staff and you're sanitizing your building every day, okay? Those things are eligible directly to the private nonprofit. So you may have a claim, okay? Depends on whether you want to claim it or not. Without an application, you can't claim it. My suggestion is you turn in an application. If you decide not to later, yippee-yi-yo, send an email, no, I don't want to do it, withdraw.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. And let's see, I have, do we email the disaster recovery email for technical assistance or,
Yes, you will.
okay,
And the disaster
And-
recovery email sends it over to myself, to Robbie, to one of my managers, or to one of my staff.
okay. And so someone said they hadn't gotten a reply yet, and I think the answer was, Dave said, if you haven't gotten a reply, email them again. Someone else was asking, what are
Answer
some
it or something.
examples of costs that would be reimbursed for nonprofits versus costs that would be direct from FEMA versus costs that would be reimbursed through applying through a local jurisdiction?
Okay, one more time. Services you're providing, in general, a private nonprofit is not eligible for that. Says so in all of the guidance that you guys have right now with this presentation, okay? In general, all right? So no activities, but the personal protective gear and sanitizing your buildings, that is eligible directly to the private nonprofit. For providing services, it must be under the request and direction of a local government. The private nonprofit gives the local government the bill. The local government pays the private nonprofit and claims the thing from FEMA. Okay? Can I do that now?
Okay. All right, folks. Any other questions for our Cal OES and FEMA folks in the chat box? There have been some questions that have been answered about the extension. Yeah, about PPE. What if they have a facility and contracts? Then I think it's both, right? You're applying directly for the facility and you need to go through your local government for the contracts.
That is correct.
Okay.
So if I might, I'm going to explain something just so that it might make better sense to people, okay? If you are a private nonprofit, and let's just pretend that your activities were eligible to FEMA, okay? Just pretend. The only thing that you would be eligible for as a private nonprofit would be overtime for your regularly budgeted staff, okay? And any temporary people you brought in, right? But as a contractor, you get to charge the local government for your regular time, which by yourself is not eligible. You become a contractor. So they'll pay for the regular time and the overtime because you're billing them. It's actually a good deal for you. You just don't know it. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, and I think our next speaker is one of our local government reps, and we're going to get to him in just a moment. There was a comment in the box, are county governments aware of this reimbursement procedure? And we find that many counties are not aware of some of the federal rules and regulations. What can Cal OES help us with that?
It may be possible because of staff turnaround that counties don't know about it. That's a very definite possibility. But this that we're talking about right here has never changed since I've been here, and I've been here 25 years. Okay? It has never changed. It has always been the same. Just as it is now. With all the changes, oh, this is all new and everything. No, this has never changed. It's always been the same. So whoever you're talking to at a county may be new. They may have never done it before, but the option has always been there.
Okay, and so if they are new or never done it before, would those be the folks that we're encouraging also sit through the PNP applicant briefing, not just the PNPs?
In the regular briefing with local governments, we are going to touch on private nonprofits. We always do.
Okay.
We're only going to make it special for the private nonprofits and segregate them. I don't know. It's a gamble. It's a gamble. Sometimes when we have regular briefings, the private nonprofits walk off with the wrong pamphlets. Sometimes they get confused. So we're going to try to make it better by having a separate one. but I can assure you in the local government applicant briefings, we are going to talk about private nonprofits.
Okay.
Okay?
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Folks, you can keep typing in. I know some of our FEMA and Cal OES reps had told us in planning for today that they only had until 11 a.m. If we get questions, if our FEMA and Cal OES reps are no longer on the line to answer them in the chat box, we will be able to grab the chat questions afterwards, and we can consolidate those and send them on to Dave and Rob after today's session, okay? But as you see on the screen, your best direct route of communication to Cal OES is that email address on your screen, and we would encourage you to communicate directly with Cal OES through that. Thank you so much, Dave and Robbie and Charles and Colleen and John. I know you were listening in. We're going to continue on. We would love for you to stay on in case you have other comments as we move forward. But our next speaker is with the City of San Jose. We have Ed Solis with the City of San Jose, who is going to just give our group an update on what the City of San Jose is working on relative to our private nonprofit. So Ed?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see all of your names in a long list here. Representing the City of San Jose, I wanted to talk about a few things. Of course, the city continues to work with CADRE and a number of consultants to better understand the FEMA reimbursement process and to maximize reimbursement for our partners and for the city as well. I've had a number of conversations over the last couple of weeks, and one of the things that we wanted to share, and I think everyone knows, the city continues to face its own serious financial issues. We are at a very crucial time right now with our revenue. As you all know, our parks, so some of our parks are closed, our community centers, everyone's sheltering in place. And so the city is, in addition to trying to assist nonprofits, we're trying to figure out how we, as an entity, are gonna maintain a level of services. And so we're gonna continue to work through that. Again, everybody has heard this morning, the gentleman previously speaking, FEMA continues to send out different guidance and updates and directives. So we on the city EOC side are trying to keep up with the changes and trying to understand them ourselves so that we do not provide services that are not reimbursable, and thus digging our financial hole a little bit deeper. We're also working with a number of you folks on this call today to finalize some contracts for food distribution and meal distribution. As many of us know, the need for food is elevating every day with a lot of folks who are becoming unemployed, and the need is growing greatly. We're working with a number of food distribution sites. Catholic Charities namely has a number of parishes that are providing food. And if you want to email me or Greg, I'm sure we can get that information out to all of you folks. We've also established a much more stringent set of rules for oversight and review. So I know some of our nonprofit partners are waiting on a final answer, but because we got to continue to monitor our funds and what's available, that process has become a little bit more bogged down in counting the numbers to make sure that we are right on target and we do not overspend our minimal resources. So we're going to continue to look at this review process, and please bear with us, folks. We're, like the gentleman before me said, we're kind of making this up as we go. We're learning, so it does add quite a slower response time from the city. And then finally, we wanted to share with folks, because the EOC of the city may have begun a 213RR, that does not mean that we're going to be able to fund some of your needs. As we speak now, we have had a number of issues through our risk management and our fiscal services where they've kicked back some requests from 213RRs that kind of seem like they would be in line with what we're doing, but obviously people who are reviewing these have a different opinion. So we're going to continue to move forward. We're going to continue to do our best to work with our partners, both at the county and at the local jurisdiction level. And that's about it for my report.
Okay. I think I'm gonna, at this point, we had done our best to try and see if we could get a county speaker as well, but unfortunately they're tied up in quite a number of meetings. So Marcia, I think, was gonna help walk us through the next two slides on, with our county relationship. So Ed, thank you so much for giving us the city perspective, and please stay on the line if there's other questions. You're seeing some things come through the chat box. So Marcia?
Absolutely.
Okay, hi. So we weren't able to get a county rep on the line, so I'm just going to speak briefly. The link that's on the screen is to the county's disaster recovery document. It has about a paragraph and a half addressing nonprofits, which obviously is not enough. And it doesn't address any of the things that we just talked about. So does our county really know what was just said? I'm not sure, but we'll make sure that they know right after this call. Next slide. Oh, it has a picture on it. Mine doesn't. So the county, I guess actually I have a question before I say this. So individual cities can also contract with nonprofits if they're just working in a single jurisdiction, and then it would be just the same process as going through the county, correct? We muted him.
Hang on one second, folks. That was a question you were asking for our Cal OES folks.
Yeah.
And actually, they were the ones who had to drop off at 11. So
Okay.
we might have lost
But
that.
but since like San Jose that's what they're doing with San Jose. If you're working directly with San Jose and no other jurisdiction, then you would contract directly with San Jose, and they would be your point of contact to get the reimbursement, or they would get the reimbursement, but they would pay you. But if you are someone that's doing multiple jurisdictions, I think we still have to talk about who's signing that contract, or do you have to have a contract with multiple jurisdictions? If it's countywide, I think it's pretty obvious that it would be county. But then they have a complicated task too, because if they don't necessarily have to be responsible for paying for everything that's happening in all of the jurisdictions in Santa Clara County. So there might have to be some other subsequent process to get reimbursed from the jurisdictions, which may make the contract more complicated because the jurisdictions may need to agree to that contract before it's signed. So there aren't any easy answers, but we are getting the answers. And let me see in my notes here. Yeah, and just one that there are lots of ways to get funding. So if you have other ways to get funding and you know that there's other funding coming, you would indicate, well, you wouldn't obviously double dip. So if you know that you're getting money in from another source for those services, then you cannot send out a bill for the same thing. That's all I have.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to drive home for folks on today's call is remember that FEMA public assistance is only one of the possible sets of resources for work. It's, as you can hear from today's conversation, pretty technical. It's pretty complicated. It's got a lot of doorways or hoops or gates or whatever you want to call it to go through. So remember that this isn't the only set of resources that are being dedicated to COVID-19. There are the CARES Act resources, there are philanthropic resources, there are other contracts that you might have, existing contracts with the city or cities or county that you can explore amending with them for your COVID specific work. So please keep that in mind, that if this feels overwhelming or that you don't fit, that we are offering today's session to simply explain the public assistance program because we know it has had a lot of questions and been a source of a lot of confusion. So we were trying to explain as much as we could with as many of their own representatives from FEMA and Cal OES speaking to you directly. And so with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Kira. And she's going to help us with, if there's any other final questions in the box that you have, keep going with your chat box questions. And Kira, do you have a few remarks you want to share with the group as well? Oh, you're muted.
Hello. Hi, folks. It's Kira Kazantzis from Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits. I'm about to hit send on an email address. So this is the email address that you can use to either reiterate the questions that you already put up in the chat box or to ask new questions of CADRE and Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits. We'll do our best to answer those as quickly as we can. If you have, for example, clarifying questions about what you heard, if you have questions about what other nonprofits might be working in the assistance area that you're working on and you would like to get together with them to work on addressing these FEMA challenges, or to work together to approach the county, city, other cities, or school districts in starting a contractual relationship, we can try to facilitate that. As you can hear clearly from both our state level partners and federal partners, there's new information coming out every day. So as it trickles down to us, we'll share it with you. I think I want to thank Anna and CADRE for putting this whole workshop together. It was a ton of work. It's a lot of coordination to get all these very busy and important disaster response folks on the line. So thanks to those, to Anna, and to the people that we had speaking today. Take a little bit of time to think about the services your agency and organizations are providing. Some of those services might be eligible for FEMA resources. Some really aren't appropriate for that. I think one thing that's important is that you can't go backwards. So you really need to lock in those relationships with the governmental entities to make those service claims. Talk to other nonprofits who are in the same boat as you to kind of strengthen your approach, both in documentation, in their outreach to the governmental entities, and also to making sure that you kind of have a good understanding of what the next steps are. We will be having follow-up sessions, specifically either giving updates to you all on new information that we're having, and we might host follow-up sessions with specific groups, types of groups, like for example, the crisis counseling folks, if they might want to get together, and the food folk, if they want to get together. We'll be hosting follow-up sessions for those folks. This is your primer. It will be recorded. Keep your eye open for the recording being posted. And thank you all for your very hard work in responding to this disaster and continuing to provide all the important services that you are already providing.
Thank you, Kira. Can I say one more thing? I saw someone mention it in the chat, and I think it's worth mentioning. The cost of this event for the jurisdictions is going to be astronomical. We all know that. And part of that cost is because we're going to be billing them, which is appropriate. But you can help them with that cost if you track your volunteer hours adequately. And we can submit a form to the group so that you can see what accurately and the level of documentation needs to be. But what happens is when FEMA reimburses the jurisdiction, they only give them 75%. And then whether or not the state contributes 75% of the remaining 25%, it still leaves a chunk of money that the jurisdiction is out, that never comes back. That magically, that offset, whatever they're still obligated to pay, gets reduced by the amount of volunteer hours that are captured that they can produce. And those volunteer hours get assigned a dollar value equivalent to what it would have cost the jurisdiction to pay someone to do that. So it is really important that you capture any volunteer hours to help the cities pay less and to help us all recover faster. That's it.
Okay, and so thank you both, Marcia and Kira. For all of you still on the line, a workshop that we would like your feedback on how you thought this went, any other questions. And so there's a link in the chat box for a quick little Zoom session eval. That keeps our funders happy. So if you'll please do that for us, and we'll probably shoot it out to you by email as well. If you could take just a few moments, it's a quick one-page form that'll keep our funders happy and keep us being able to bring this type of information and more back out to you. Okay, thank you all, and stay safe, stay well. Thank you.